Ilia Topuria continues his aura of invincibility, knocking out Charles Oliveira Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena at UFC 317. What is there to say other than we are witnessing history? We are witnessing a fighter. This is kind of a cliche, but it's performances like this and moments like this where we see the difference between like good fighters, great fight, and I should be more clear. We see the difference between a great fighter and one of the greatest of our time, one of the greatest we're witnessing, and we saw that last night. The way he made Charles Oliveira, who's a great champion, a top lightweight champion in history. I mean, I think he's better than BJ Penn in my opinion. I think it's Islam, Habib, and then Charles. Maybe Habib and Charles might be tied because they never fought, but had similar opponents. But up Islam is up there now. But now, how do you even say Ilias might be the best lightweight champion right now because Islam, until Islam comes down and fights him and beats him, I'm not even convinced Islam is the greatest lightweight of all time. Not going to buy into the whole ducking thing, even though I did a little bit. I did buy into the whole ducking narrative that Islam Makhachev doesn't want this fight. And after what he did to Charles, I can't blame him, shit. I mean, fucking Ilya's a scary dude. Anyway, let's break down this fight. Let's talk about what happened on Saturday night. I know this video is incredibly late. I am so sorry, but, shit gets in the way. Let's talk about what happened. All right, so we have never seen. I'm sorry to start out this picture like this to all the Charles fans and to all the people like Charles. I'm really sorry to do this jump scare and show this image. But we've never seen Charles get flatlined like this. He's been KO'd, of course. TKO'd, technical knocked out, Max Holloway, Paul Felder, sorry. But he's never been, like, put in a fucking tombstone like this. Like, out cold, arm stiff, in a fencing position, eyes rolled to the back of his head. This was brutal. This was brutal to watch as someone who also kind of likes Charles. Not a big Charles fan, but I like him. Didn't want to see him go out like this, but very entertaining fight nonetheless. Now, the height difference, people were really, I saw a lot of AI memes in the build up to the fight, that kind of exaggerated the height difference between them. Although Charles is taller, had the reach, I don't know, wait, did he have the reach advantage? I can't remember. But it seems like they have similar arm length when I see this picture, sorry. But Charles had the height advantage, and I saw a lot of people saying that was going to be a big factor, at lightweight, and that his power wasn't going to translate well to the... Though, God, that did not age well, did it, for a lot of people who were saying that Ilia's power was not going to translate well into lightweight, bringing up Conor McGregor. This dude isn't Conor McGregor. This guy's better than Conor McGregor. All right, Conor McGregor wishes he had a start to his career like Ilia Topuria. This is so much more impressive than anything Conor has done. Ilia's defended his title. That's one more title defense than Conor McGregor is ever going to have. All right. Anyway, I do think that Charles did go into this fight with the right game plan. I'm going to switch to the next slide right now. But I will also say about the height difference and everything. Ilia Topuria, we've seen him have taller opponents and stuff. I was going to say something earlier. Ilia Topuria is like the Mike Tyson of the UFC. It really is the Mike Tyson of MMA, I should say. Like that, that got brought up around a lot with Conor McGregor, got brought up with fucking Jeremy Stevens, fucking, who else? People were calling Hamzat the, like the Mike Tyson of wrestling, which I kind of agree, takes him out early. But in terms of like striker, in terms of like a guy who finishes a fight, in terms of a champion who finishes a fight quickly and makes it look easy, Ilia Topuria is the closest thing we have to a prime Mike Tyson. A dude in his 20s, early 30s, just taking people out left and right. And the way he does it too, how most of his opponents are taller, but he's really good at using those hooks and those right overhands, those big power shots, just big knockouts. Anyway, I do think Charles Oliveira had a smart game plan going into this fight. He started with heavy leg kicks, low leg kicks, heavy low leg kicks, as well as a lot of sharp teeps to the body and to the thighs of Topuria. Now, this fight started exactly how most people thought. It was just fireworks, and they were both swinging viciously. As I said, Charles started with vicious low leg kicks very early, trying to not take Topuria's legs, take his wheels out early, especially with a guy who's never been to like the fourth and fifth round. Or, sorry, he has been to the fourth and fifth round, but to take his legs out early, that serves Charles more of a favor, who has more experience in the fourth and fifth round as opposed to Ilia Topuria, to take his wheels out early for a young fighter. Now, it was the right game plan to like just throw the fucking kitchen sink at Ilia in a way, because that's kind of what you have to do. We'll also talk about how that was kind of a mistake. Um, anyway, as they were throwing wildly in the first seconds of the fight, in the first minute of the fight, um, Topuria was throwing, as he always does, good right hands and sharp jabs. And one of those sharp jabs very quickly cut open the eye of Charles Oliveira. And Oliveira went for a takedown early in the fight, as we see here. But we saw great great wrestling defense from Ilia Topuria, who was just so fucking strong that even though Charles was getting the takedown, got him up, Topuria just leaned, just put his weight on him as he was getting the takedown. Very smart thing to do, to just lean his weight on him, and got the takedown over and reversed the position. And after that, I believe there was a moment in which Mark Goddard stood them up after. So I'm sorry, I'm skipping through some important details, but there was a little alarming moment in the fight. Probably the most alarming moment for Ilia Topuria in this whole fight is where Charles Oliveira had his ankle and his leg for a second. Now Topuria did the smart thing and just never stopped moving. Kept working, kept moving, kept twisting, around. Didn't stop moving. The worst thing you can do against someone that good, against like Charles Oliveira on the ground, is stop moving, because then he'll choke you, take you, submit you, break your limbs, whatever he can do to win the fight. Now, Mark Goddard stood them up after Topuria got out of that position, and Charles stayed on the flat on his back, as he usually does, as he has a lot of faith in his jiu-jitsu. Goddard stood them up, and Topuria immediately started landing, like, combinations. Big combinations after Mark Goddard stood them up. And in that, within those exchanges, Oliveira probably got the best the best striking shot he had in that whole fight, and it was a good uppercut, a sneaky uppercut he landed on Topuria's chin. Now, it obviously didn't affect him very much, because Topuria would go, like, immediately after that, the knockout would happen. Now, the setup to the knockout was very beautiful. I'm not going to play the video, and this moment doesn't show it, but right before this moment, before Topuria catches Oliveira as he's throwing, Topuria went a straight, sharp jab to the body and a straight, sharp jab up top, opening him. And then as Charles was throwing, that's when he hit him with that beautiful right hand, left hook combination that's probably going to be replayed, and we're going to see it constantly. We see that right hand by Topuria is money. His left hook is money too. And he hit him with two of his hardest shots, putting Charles to sleep. Now, as I said before, we never seen Charles go out like this. And it was the initial right hook that put him out. The left hook was just an addition. And then there was a shot after that. But this was brutal. I mean, we've seen Charles in there with the best of the best. And I know what some people are going to say. Maybe his chin has been worn out over time. And, I get it, he's 35. He's been in the UFC since 18. That's very believable. But we're also, by doing it, it's kind of taking credit away from Ilia. And they did that with the Volkanovski fight. I've already seen people try to take away credit from Ilia's knockouts. Volk was making a quick turnaround against Islam, which is true. I get it. But, that was Volk's choice to take that fight nonetheless. It was, with Max Holloway, it was like, he was making a big weight cut after fighting Justin Gaethje, despite the fact that Max Holloway's been fighting in featherweight and going between weight classes for years now, between lightweight and featherweight. I don't think that was a fact. I don't even think Max Holloway himself would use that as a fucking excuse. Max Holloway was much more competitive than both Volk and Oliveira against Topuria, by the way. Now, as we see here, this is Charles Oliveira's resume. Look at the guys he's been hit by. I mean, and Topuria is the first person to put him out cold, asleep. Now, he's been hit by Michael Chandler, Arman Tsarukyan, Beneil Dariush, Islam Makhachev, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Chandler again. And, even though he was fighting Tony Ferguson after the Gaethje fight, I get it. That's still a Tony with power. We saw Tony, knock down Michael Chandler. Even though Tony was not the same fighter, Tony still had power in his hands. He just had none of this, the the skill, and a lot of the durability was just gone, sadly. Um, Kevin Lee, they're again beating the GOAT, submitting the GOAT Kevin Lee. I mean, that's probably his most impressive win on this entire resume. Getting hit by Jim Miller, getting hit by Clay Guida, and of course getting hit by Paul Felder. Now, although Paul Felder took him out in the second round, TKO, we never really went out, was out cold, as we said many times. But anyway, this just shows you Ilia Topuria's power. For Oliveira to be in the cage with this many dangerous killers, and for Topuria to be the first one to take his lights out, and in round one nonetheless, is beyond impressive. It's unfathomable, and I can't wait to see Ilia Topuria's career go on from here. And for Charles Oliveira, I would say take a lot of time off. That was a devastating knockout. 7 months to a year, even if you have to take it off. I mean, obviously Oliveira is already 35. A lot of fighters, that's when fans start to say it's, start talking about retirement a lot, is right after 35. That's when retirement, speculation, and the topic becomes the focal point. But, I think if Oliveira takes a lot of time off, he could have an exciting fight against, trying to think. Could be Justin Gaethje still. I mean, obviously Justin Gaethje would do nothing for his legacy or anything. Could maybe have a rematch against Beneil Dariush. That's a guy he's beaten. Anyway, one last question before we go. Is this the best 3-fight win streak in UFC history? I think it is. I don't know if there's a more... by the way, 2024 Fighter of the Year. Please comment below and agree with me and tell me what you think. I think it's aged so bad, giving Alex Piera the fucking 2024 Fighter of the Year. That has aged so terribly, especially after what Topuria just did to Charles Oliveira. 2024 Fighter of the Year should have been Ilia Topuria. Knocking out Volk and Max Holloway in the same calendar year is much more impressive than beating, let's see. Okay, Yuri Prohaska, that's impressive. Beating Jamal Hill, not very impressive. We've seen so far 2-fight losing streak since then. Wasn't really impressive. A lot of people consider him one of the least skilled, worst champions in UFC history. Beating Khalil Roundtree, as we've seen. Khalil Roundtree didn't even deserve that title shot, and Alex almost went life and death with him. He was ranked number 8. And since then, Khalil Roundtree had a fight against Jamal Hill that he should have finished and didn't. Alright, what Poatan did in 2024 has not aged well. It's not as impressive as what Ilia Topuria did. And it wasn't even as impressive then. A big excuse and a big talking point that a lot of people use for Alex was that he saved events. He took in these events on short notice. That doesn't matter. Ilia Topuria took on better competition, and he took them out in ways that we had not even fucking seen before. Max Holloway had never been slumped out cold like that. And when Alex Volkanovski got slumped out cold, it was from a head kick. It wasn't from a fucking right hand or right hook to the fucking chin. No one's ever hit him that hard. Anyway, I do think that this is the best 3-fight win streak. People will look at John Jones's resume, like Rampage, Lyoto Machida, during that time when he was beating the who's who of the light heavyweight, the Roller Killers. But as many of us would say, a great talking point to dismiss that bullshit is that a lot of those wins were against puffed up middleweights, undersized guys. And when John Jones, after being busted for PEDs a couple times and coming back to the UFC in the latter part of his career, like mid to later 2010s, he wasn't even finishing people. Dude was going the distance with fucking Anthony Smith and shit. So no, I don't think. And once John Jones started taking on people his own height, and more similar to his stature, he started losing. All right, he started not losing, but having, really competitive fights against people he could have finished that he was being marketed to finish. I'm sorry if you guys keep hearing whining noises. My German Shepherd is in my room currently. We're babysitting a German Shepherd. He just won't stop whining, so I'm sorry if the microphone is picking that up. Anyway, tell me who you guys think Ilia Topuria should fight next. I'm gonna make a video about that coming out today, soon. Obviously, we saw the 3 contenders in the audience after the fight. And tell me, do you think that this is the best 3-fight win streak in UFC history, or do you think another fighter has a better 3-fight win streak? Does Islam Makhachev still have a more impressive 3-fight win streak by beating Volkanovski twice, beating Dustin Poirier? No, I don't think he does. I really don't. I think this is the most impressive 3-fight win streak we've seen in UFC history. Topuria entered the UFC in 2020. 2024, he became champ, and between that, he gave us a bunch of classic fights even before coming champion. We really are witnessing the GOAT. And also, tell me what you guys think in the comment about Ilia Topuria not getting 2020-24 Fighter of the Year, and instead it going to Alex Pereira for 2024. Let me know if you guys think that still aged well, if you still agree with that decision. Thank you.